tied into our state tuition support. So when you pull that away, we're actually receiving less funding by category in 26 than we did previously. We continue to balance that with our declining ADM. It's just happening through natural attrition of graduating classes of 80 and incoming classes of 60, 65, wherever it may be. We continue to compete with the teacher salary scale. Other pieces that came out of legislation was that our beginning teacher had to get to 45,000. So as we head into collective bargaining this fall, in my opinion, that's a non-negotiable, but the state is essentially negotiating for us. And so that creates a challenge. We have to transfer from ed to op, as most districts do. We've been very conservative in the amount that we transfer, but we can transfer up to 15% to help offset some of those operations fund expenditures. I will tell you that I do see that percentage growing moving forward, depending upon how much we lose in the operations fund. And if they come back through legislation and they protect the debt service fund from any property tax cap impact, because if they do that, then that's just going to roll over to our operations fund, and our operations fund is going to get hit even harder. So if depending on how much we actually end up getting hit with that, the percentage that we transfer from ed to op may increase. We continue to build out graduation pathways programming, which causes us to bring programming in, but then also look for programming out, whether that's Ivy Tech, whether that's IUK, whether that's Hines Career Center, Grant Regional Career Center, whatever it may be. But the CTE, dual credit certifications, those things don't come free. But again, in an effort to meet every kid where they are, to prepare them for the day that they walk across our stage, equipped to the full potential, these are additional expenditures that continue to grow with this shift in graduation pathways. And finally, the last thing that we seem to have battled here year after year is just increasing insurance costs. In the last 2 years, 10% increase. When you think of Family Plan 1 has a premium of $36,000, a 10% increase in the last 2 years, another $3,600 on that. So, and that's only for health. So we continue to balance those increases as well. Okay, so the revenue that I budgeted in 26 is a little shy of $18 million. So you see it there, just $17,955,000. And the assumptions that I used to generate that number were a February 2026 in-person count of 850 students and a virtual prep count of 1,200. I will tell you today we sit with 907. We are receiving state tuition support for 875. So my hope is that we hold tighter that 907 as we near the October count, because then we'll get that retro pay for those 32 additional students, approximately $250,000 over the course of a year, so $125,000 in this first six-month period. And then in fall of 26, so a year from now, I used an in-person ADM of 825 and a virtual ADM of 1,250. So you can see what that equates to from a revenue standpoint of what in-person generates and what virtual generates. That's just a reflection of ADM. And again, virtual is only reimbursed at 85%. Okay, but obviously when there's more numbers, then it helps to offset that. So I think it was our last count where our virtual state tuition support actually passed our in-person for the first time. On the expenditure side, so just shy of 18 million in revenue, and I budgeted 19.2, almost 19.3 million in expense. Obviously, that's a $1.3 million shortfall. That does include the $1 million ed to op transfer, and dependent upon that revenue that I projected at $1 million, that's either 6% of our 6% of our total ed fund revenue or 13% of our in-person revenue. Okay, so that's those percentages there. Other assumptions that I used in projecting our expenditures: a 3.5% increase in 25-26 salaries, and a 5% increase on insurance rates. The in-person budget, I will tell you, so if you took our in-person expenditures, the expenditures tied to in-person programming in Madison-Grant High School Corporation, from budget year 25 to budget year 26, I've reduced it by $364,000. So in 2026, I budgeted $364,000 less in in-person expenditures than what we did in 2025. And still in doing that, there's still that spend down the fund balance of approximately 1.3 million. But again, I'm hoping I've understated our revenue, overstated our expenditures, so as we move throughout the budget year, we settle somewhere there in the middle. So how do we reduce that spend down? Increase in ADM. I just spoke of it. If we stay closer to 907, we'll see an extra $130,000 this fall yet. That doesn't impact the 26 budget, but if those numbers hold more true, that will. So increase in ADM, transfer less from ed to ops. Obviously, that's robbing Peter to pay Paul. If I transfer less, that puts more strain on ops. If I transfer more, that puts more strain on ed. So we're just going back and forth there. You guys, and I say this over and over each year, you guys have heard this, but 85% of our expenditures in the education fund are tied to salary and benefits. It's people. And so as we absorb through attrition over the summer and into this fall, we'll continue to have those conversations and monitor where we are. But at the end of the day, 85% of our expense in the education fund is tied to people.
Which is
we'll get to that when I get there. Roughly 45%, I believe, off the top of my head, but I do have that on the slide. But and I think the other thing too, creative staffing, larger class sizes, and then efficient utilization of sped and title grants. One thing we did this year is oftentimes we would use sped and title grants to pay for instructional aids. Okay, instructional aids are one of our highest transient employee pools, just naturally. Okay, I often put it in that's our same pool of bank tellers and clerical work and some of those pieces. It's just a transient pool. But we would put those people in grants, okay? And now all of a sudden they're federally funded because they're federally funded by the special ed grant or by the title grant. So I'm limited on how I can use them. So starting this year, I flipped that. And I loaded these grants with licensed teachers. So I loaded our SPED grant with licensed teachers. I loaded our title grant with 2 social workers and 2 interventionists. Okay? What would happen when you have aides in those grants and aides resign and that spot's left unfilled for 3 weeks? There's expenditure that we had budgeted that we're not spending. And then we're chasing our tail figuring out how we're spending these grants. Also, by me placing the aides now in the education fund, I can use an aide to service special ed or title because now I'm not using federal funding to pay their salary. So my restrictions get lifted. So now I can use one person to service multiple categories and not get in any trouble with criteria of federal grants. So that is one big shift that we've done this year. I'll track that as we move through this 25-26 school year and see where that goes. Title II and Title IV funding did come in. There was talk that it wasn't going to come in. It did come in, which was a welcome relief. But that is a shift that I've made with some grant dollars, and we'll see how that plays out. This gives you a little bit of an idea, some historical from 21 to 26 in our education fund. The number in italics, the number that I have italicized is our in-person. So that those exclude our virtual. So you can see our budget there. Last year we budgeted almost 8.9 million tied to in-person, and this year I'm budgeting at 8.5. So we're down 300,000 there. And then you can see what we have budgeted for our virtual expenditures as well. But when you look at our budget in 2021, it's 7.7 million, and I'm presenting a budget to you tonight of 18.2 million. So that is an impact of virtual programming in our school district. Okay, I'll hit pause for a second as we wrap up ed. Do you guys have any questions about our education fund? Okay. Operations, let's first start with our challenges. Max levy increase. So legislation tells me how much I can increase my 25 levy to 26. It's 4%. I can't increase it any more than that. 4% doesn't offset 10% increase in even insurance. So when I say 4%, is it keeping pace with expenditure increases, whether that's equipment, whether that's utilities, whether that's insurance, whether that's professional services? We're not the only entity that's hit by increases. And as other entities are hit by increases, and we use those entities, and we go to those entities, their prices go up. And so the 4% that I'm allowed to increase that levy by doesn't keep up with the increase in expenditures. You compound that with now, for the first time in our district's history, we're gonna start seeing some circuit breaker loss in our operations fund. I used a number of $350,000 in this budget. I will tell you, I think that's probably high for 2026. But again, I'd rather use that number than use a lower number and get blindsided. So until we really navigate that, I'll continue to work with policy analytics on that to really hone that in. But that is the number that I used for the 26 budget. But you know, a couple weeks ago when policy analytics presented, you know, we saw where they're projecting out 2031, where that's over $500,000. So that's coming, unless legislation were to change between now and then. So we'll continue to monitor that. But the ed to op transfer, you know, again, for every dollar I take out of the education fund, put in the operations fund, it creates an additional strain in the ed. So we continue to balance that. And that's why I really use those two funds hand in hand. Again, no new news there with the increasing insurance costs. You know, and just again, facility maintenance and upkeep. It seems like every other day I'm turning around and there's something, you know, and I explain it like this a lot of times, you know, home ownership upkeep is one thing, but when you multiply it by the thousands and thousands and thousands of more square feet that we have, it only compounds that. From an HVAC side, from a roofing side, from a property side, all those pieces. And so, and again, as we have to buy parts, as we have outside vendors coming in, those costs are increasing as well. So those are all things that impact our operations fund. So I've projected revenue of a little over 4.4 million. 3.5 of that would come from a levy. Okay, so I am going to go after our maximum levy at this point. I'll see what that does. I can't tell you, I'll get to that later. We have no net assessed value information right now, so I can't drive a rate from any of this. Even though that was due on August 1st, we still don't have that today from either of our counties. But, so revenue, the 3.5 in the max levy, $1 million in our transfer. There's some other miscellaneous revenue, but then we have to also reduce by our circuit breaker estimate. And then you pair that with our expenditures of what I've projected of just right at $5 million. Salary and benefits right there, Mr. Whiteman, 45% of the total budget in the operations fund, as opposed to 85% in our education fund. The operating costs make up the other 55% of that. And operating costs, I just made a note there, bus replacement at zero, capital projects at 300,000. So that's what those figures are there. But on the operations fund side, I'm going to try to work a budget in 26 that only has $13,000 more of expenditure than what we had in 25. We're going to try. Okay? But that budget that I'm presenting to you tonight for 26 in our operations fund is only $13,000 higher than our 25 budget. We've done some things this summer. We absorbed a bus route this summer. We've absorbed a custodian. We continue to monitor each of those areas. But you guys, at the end of the day, where our education fund is people, our operations fund is buildings and things and equipment and HVAC and all of that. And so as we look at those, you know, for instance, one of the projects I have in front of me right now that we're looking at is what would it cost to overhaul our HVAC at Park Elementary? And the best number I've heard so far is $900,000. You know, so when you talk about almost $1 million just on HVAC, I don't have a lot of wiggle room out of $5 million. So, you know, this budget has us projected to spend down our fund balance by a little over $500,000. Again, we're going to do the same thing. I don't think circuit breaker is going to come in at 350. I'm really hoping that in 26 it's going to be closer to 100. So there we just swung by $250,000, which cuts our deficit there in about half. So we'll We'll continue to track that. You guys will get that beginning in January as I start presenting 26 cash flow. And we'll walk through it, and I'll get to the 25 cash flow here in a little bit. That continues to clean up a little bit as well. So again, hoping I understated a little bit of revenue, overstated expenditures, but I'll tell you, I can't really understate revenue much more in our operations fund because there's just, I'm maxed on what I can levy, and then based after that, it's really a transfer other than a little bit of miscellaneous revenue. So ways to reduce spend down. I will send this presentation out. We're not gonna pull it up right now, but that link there will show you in comparison to other districts in our area, our transfer percentage from ed to op in comparison to what they transfer. That's all public information found on the Department of Ed. That's where I pulled my data. But what that will show you what they transfer each 6-month period from their ed to ops fund. And then it will also show you what their total education fund revenue is and what that percentage is. So if you get a chance, I'll send this out. Again, all public data on IDOE, but we are far more conservative in that transfer than most districts. I can tell you that. We'll continue to monitor our CPF expenditures in 2026, much like what I've done here the last couple of years. I'm going to work the 25 budget, and if there's an opportunity for us to encumber anything on the 25 budget to secure it for 26, that's what I'll continue to do. I like that because that's a guarantee. For me to commit 2026 expenditures in the month of February 2026 on a CPF item, and then something happens in June, we're stuck. So I really like to manage those CPF expenditures by encumbering on previous year budget for the next year. So that's what we'll continue to monitor as we close out 25. GEO bond from 2024 is going to pay for the buses, so that's going to take care of that. And then our 2023 construction fund, as we've already talked about, I'll keep putting things in front of you guys as we go, because the days of holding on to that pot of money for 5 years just isn't an option anymore. That was a really nice insurance blanket for us in the past, as we had some projects and we had some leftover money that we could just basically, I call it self-insurance. We don't have that option now because we have to have a plan to have that spent by November of 26. So you guys will start getting, probably in the second meeting of each month, I will start presenting what that balance is, plans for that balance, things that we're looking at. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So in our operations fund, you can see some historical data here. Again, nothing too crazy. Again, I can't even give you an anticipated tax rate because I have no net assessed value data right now. I can't tell you what is advertised was 72 cents, 73 cents on our operations fund, but that's never a true reflection because I always underestimate our assessed value as I build this out. So, give you a chance to look at that for just a minute. You can ask any questions that you want. Okay, you can go to the next slide, Mr. Richard. Debt service revenue of 2.5. I'm going to levy the $2,471,811. I've used $73,500 as some miscellaneous revenue. Expenditures are lease payments for the year 2026 are $2,471,311. I will tell you that that's a $204,000 reduction. Just in from 2025 to our 24 GEO. So our 24 GEO bond had $204,000 more of lease payments in 25 than what it does in 26. So our total amount of lease payments in 26 is actually going to go down a little bit. Fund balance, you guys, we currently hold maximum fund balance until we know what our circuit breaker impact is going to be on our debt service fund. I don't know, but I don't anticipate any significant change in our fund balance. It may decrease $100,000, but we'll know more as some of the circuit breaker reports start to get released. So again, here, same table as our operations fund with some levy info and some rate info. So you can see that the advertised tax rate for this fund was right at 45 cents, but again, that's that is not there because I used a net assessed value of 550 million to come up with that number. So. Rainy day, projecting no revenue. I do budget annually $500,000 in expense just in case we were to need to get to it. We had the appropriation for it. But again, I don't anticipate any change in our fund balance in the rainy day fund. So here's net assessed values, a historical view. So when I say I use a conservative value to project these, in 25, our net assessed value was just shy of $639 million. As I built this budget, I used a net assessed value of $550 million. So just remember that as that AV comes in higher, it drives that rate lower. So that's why we do it that way. So as our net assessed value comes in, we hope it to hold more true to what we were in 25, which would drive down that rate. By me using a low assessed value in the budget process, that gives me the liberty, once the 1782 notice is released, to really dial in and figure out what we want our levy values to be. Okay. So here again, advertised and certified. So you can see the white color is what our advertised rate is each year, and then the number next to it is what ends up being certified. You can see, go back to 22, in 21 when we were there, but then beginning in 22, we've stayed right at that 92 cents for the last 4 years. That is where we're going to have that shift in mindset, and what you're going to start seeing a table from me on in future years is levy amounts. Okay, and we'll look at what we levied in our operations fund. We'll look at what we levied in our debt service fund. And then we'll really start to track those. Before we wrap the hearing portion up, I will entertain any questions on the hearing of our 2026 budget at this time. Okay, hearing no questions, we'll come back on Tuesday, September 23rd with an anticipated adoption. Much briefer presentation that night. Any questions between now and then, feel free to reach out. But hearing no questions, we can close our hearing for the 2026 budget. As she gets back to the next slide, the next action item that I'm going to have for you is seeking permission for an additional appropriation in our education fund. I'm seeking an additional appropriation of $1 million, and this is all tied to instruction services related to our virtual school program. So, again, we have an approved budget, an approved amount of appropriations, but not knowing where that revenue is going to come in on the virtual school side, that drives our expenditure as well on a percentage basis. And so I'm just seeking an additional $1 million appropriation for our education fund tied to instruction services for our virtual students.
Question on the first by Mr. Stanley, second by Mr. Venus. All those in favor? Motion passes.
I'll let you go, Mr. Ward.
Next item is the teacher performance plan for 25-26. Every year, we bring this to you. It's the evaluation plan for how we're going to evaluate our teachers and our administrators. The only difference is this year we've had communication with the Teachers Association. Changes this year is we've stressed in the past about the evaluation plan. This year, we're stressing the fact that the evaluation plan, all along evaluations need to be done before Christmas, because we're truly using the evaluation plan as a way to improve our performances, as opposed to making it punitive. We don't want that to be considered a punitive item. We want it to be considered how we can improve our teaching in the classroom and our classroom instruction. So that was our main changes in our performance plan this year. So I ask if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. But if you don't, ask for your approval.
Need a motion for the approval of the teacher performance plan, please. First by Mr. Stanley, second by Mr. Venus. All those in favor? Motion passes.
Next is route review. Every year, any changes we made to the bus routes, we bring to you so you know, in case you get a call from somebody on transportation routes that are not pleased with the time they're being picked up or the way they're being delivered to school. So the changes are in your file there. And if you have any questions, I'll attempt to be as smart as Christie, what she does, where everybody lives in our corporation.
Any questions? Need a motion for the route change or route review. First by Dr. Sneed, second by Mr. Stanley. All those in favor? Motion passes.
The next item was brought to me by Mrs. English Steiner, and she was asking me, we have a lot of old instruction materials in the department. A lot of them are VHS tapes that are just sitting in closets that we can no longer use anymore. There are also novels. What she'd like to do with some of these novels, she wanted to contact some of the area schools, items that we aren't teaching anymore out of the novels that they may be teaching. She'd like to develop a trade so we can trade novels to sections. So there's a way she's trying to repurpose those items, those instructional materials that she has. A lot of them, and as we purchased these books years ago, our classes were much larger and we needed more. And also, a lot of those are paperback books, and after they sit with the student for a long period of time, they become less than desirable to read. So, we are adjusting those, and I'd ask you to approve the surplus items.
Any questions? The approval, motion for the approval of the English surplus, please. First by Mr. Stanley, second by Mr. Venus. All those in favor? Passes.
Okay, a little more surplus, must be fall cleaning around here. But in what used to be the old junior high cafeteria, that had kind of become a catch-all for our food service department. And there are items in there that have not been used for years and years and years and years. And so Mrs. Bernay and I, it's actually started with a program that's going to be coming out soon. That's kind of being spearheaded by Mrs. Stanley, and there'll be more information to come. But we've got a need for that space, and so that's kind of been the fire to get us to move some of these things. But these lists of items that I'm seeking permission, approval for surplus out of the food service department, we are going to run through a silent auction again. So we'll put that back out on social media, and we'll get the document built. But we're going to put that back out on silent auction again. We're going to run it for a period of time and see if there aren't churches, if there aren't community members, if there aren't, and there's food trays with Madison-Grant logo on it. I mean, they're neat stuff. We just don't want to claim the surplus in case if people do have desire to have it. So Mrs. Bernay and I are seeking approval of that surplus list that's listed in front of you tonight as the plan with those items moving forward.
Motion for the approval of kitchen surplus. First by Mr. Stanley, second by Mr. Venus. All those in favor?
Mr. Richard working hard in here.
Just need to make that screen a little bigger.
All right, let's jump into August cash flow. And I'll be honest with you, this is about the month when cash flow starts getting exciting for me. I feel like the first 6 to 7 months we throw figures on there so we can track them and we can know. But there's so much unknowns for the first half of the year. And so now we've got some knowns. Like I know we've got 907 butts and seats today. And so that helps me as I really dial in a cash flow and really working hard here as we close out a year to find a way to land in the black in both our ed and op fund. And so for the month of August in our education fund, we started with $3,968,233.05. We did receive in revenue $1,473,452.34. And we spent $1,757,078.56. You can see 200,000 there in that line 600. That's curricular materials. That's Chromebook lease. That's software subscriptions, that sort of thing. That's why those expenditures are high there in the month of August. But all things considering, after our activity for the month, we ended the month with $3,684,606.83. With a $500,000 transfer, in the month of December, right now we're projecting to end the year in our ed fund $192,000 in the red. So that's cleaning up quite a bit. You know, the first half of the year we're projecting 1.2. Again, because I understate my revenue and overstate my expenditures as we build a budget. But really starting to dial in now with this fund and our out fund. But right now, based on some more, what I say more true numbers, we're projecting 192,000 in the red. You have any questions on that fund? Okay, let's jump to debt service. Debt service saw no activity for the month. We started it in the month with $942,630. I'm going to assume no questions, and we'll go to operations. Operations fund for the month of August. We started the month with $3,103,849.27. We did receive $49,105.60, and we spent $667,952.69. We had the PCAP floor remodel. We had these newer 5 restroom remodels, some bigger expenditures in the month of August. That's why they're up a little bit there. But we ended the month with $2,485,002.18. If you slide all the way out there into column O in the month of December, down at the very bottom right, where you see that note of target, negative $438,232. Right now we're projecting negative $400,000. So in my world, we're projecting, this is showing you that we've spent down fund balance by $400,000. But remember, I carried over $438,000 of encumbrance from 25 to 26. Okay, so any fund balance spend down of less than $438,000 is really in the black for 26. And so that's what I'll continue to monitor here as we close out the year over the next few months. And hopefully building the capacity to encumber some money on 25 money to pay for some projects to be completed in 26. If you have any questions, I forgot to mention this in the education fund, but the month of August was a prepaid month as well. So personnel expenditures are a little higher because of that. Rainy day, much like debt service, no activity. We still have $1,746.36 in our rainy day fund. And our ADM, like I said, the numbers when I pulled at this point were 909, but I will tell you the last 3 weeks on Friday, we've had 907. So, and B-Prep's closing in on 1,200. So this shows 1152, but in our most recent conversation, they're near 1,200. Does anyone have any questions on our August cash flow report?
By the end of the year, we will end in the black.
That is the goal, like every year. But I will remind you that, and I'll put this slide together too for you in future. I'll make a note. But I want to look at this from year to year, because if we ended 24 with $500,000 in the black, which we did not, and in 26 we went 200,000 in the red. Over that 2-year span, we're still 300,000 in the black. So we'll put that together and we'll show. I'll build that out, because that would be good data for us to see. Because again, you guys, I don't know what the circuit breaker impact is going to be. I'm leery of a lot of things right now, just because of the unknown. But yes, that is my goal every year, to try to put us in a spot where that December cash flow reflects positive balance in both those funds.
Mr. Mayor, would you
explain again what circuit breaker is?
Tax cap loss. Okay, so once a person, a business, personal property, whatever it may be, once they hit that tax cap threshold, that's loss in revenue for us that we would be owed should that limit not be in place.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, I am, go to my slide, because I can't remember what else I added. Construction update, a parking lot was done before the first Friday night football game. So
Everyone's happy.
they finished striping Friday morning. Just as the vehicles were pulling in to set up the bounce houses for family fun night and everything else. I think they finished landscaping work at 5 o'clock on that Friday. It was hopping. Still, and there's gonna be some pictures that circulate from that facility. Lancer came out with a photographer and they snapped some pictures, some drone footage, and some other things. One of the quotes that we've been gathering, knowing that money's gonna have to be spent before November 26th, just so we have it in our pocket, is what it costs us to add irrigation to both baseball and softball fields. Okay, we've received 3 quotes at this time. That's the best quote. But that is what we are doing, and I'll continue to put those in front of you as well. Kind of a list of ideas, a list of things that as time nears and the funds are available, things that we can start to check off and get completed. But what brings up the irrigation is you will notice the difference from the overhead shots of our baseball and softball outfield versus our football practice field and football field. Both of those facilities are irrigated. Baseball and softball are not, but you can see that difference in some of those drone shots. Some disease in center field of softball, some dead areas, some dry areas, just some things that water would help. But we do have that in our folder sitting there. The long-term facility study is still progressing. As we're at the School Board Association conference and we're chatting with Lancer, I'll lean on it a little bit and try to firm up a date when they feel like they may be ready to come present to you guys that study. I present to all of us that study as well.
We had a nice ribbon cutting event on Friday night. We got a lot of compliments about our facility that night. Want to make sure that everybody's aware. I think Brian and his crew worked at 1 o'clock in the morning Thursday night. Friday morning. So that was, and then they came back early, finishing up on Friday. It looked really nice. Now the challenge is making sure all that stays nice for a while with all those new plants. So that's a challenge. Another opportunity we've offered to our staff, our teachers, to sit in the D zones in the lawn chair. Some of them are taking advantage of that. Some of them at the high school. We've had a nice crew last 3 or 4 days. As the weather gets colder, they aren't near as excited about sitting out there in the lawn chair. We found it gets lonely out there when it gets so cold. But they're very appreciative of that. Several of them mentioned that's a nice perk for them. Once again, this weekend we'll be down for the IPSS fall conference. Looking forward to that. We'll be Mr. Rutherford and myself and Ms. Hudson presenting at 3:30 Monday afternoon. So we'll be doing that. I'll be there early on Sunday before you all are. Something to keep in mind. Bulls play at home at 4 o'clock that day. And so be there in traffic. Save the date, November 3rd is our fall conference at Bel Air Events in Kokomo. It's our region fall meeting. Registration's at 5:30, 6 o'clock dinner. Just communicate with me or Anna if you intend to go, if you have time that night. That will be just like it always is. Last thing I have under checkpoints, we're getting ready to start our checkpoints for our academics, see how our academics are doing. Those will be the first chance we have to start digging into data, find out if adjustments we've made over the summer are coming to fruition, and we'll make adjustments and they're working. So we're looking forward to getting those results in first, so we can help train our teachers on how to dig into their own data, and we want to see that too. So that's an exciting point for us. That's the hardest part about making changes is you have to sit and wait till the next testing unit, and then if not, have to make a couple adjustments too. But that's on our radar right now to get that through and start checking those figures as well. So that's all I have for you this evening. Public impressions. The public is always invited to speak before the board. Please stand and recognized by the president and state your first and last name. Comments should be addressed to the board and be limited to corporation issues only. No complaints or accusations regarding personnel can be allowed during this public discussion time. A time limit of 3 minutes will be given if more than one person is represented for a group. Only one spokesperson will be heard.
We did have our first practice for the track team, 19 shooters on the track team, so it's down a little bit, but we're really excited to get another season started. Carla's granddaughter is on the track team again. She's shooting wonderfully. And so, yeah, we're excited to have another good season. Grant 4 will be October 25th. Hopefully we'll win. That's the plan. We'll see.
I know I've received lots of compliments about the ribbon cuttings with the facilities. There's quite a lot of people that have taken notice, not even in our district. As I am at work, I've gotten many a compliment from again, people I know that are outside our district. Gotten compliments from people inside our district that are at my job as well. And they've been bragging about how everything looks. I had another mom who came up and said that all of our classes and different things that we offer saved her daughter 2 years on college. So she was extremely excited about that. She's in law school now, so she was able to start basically as a junior, and so she is already in law school. So super excited about that. So she said again basically how much of a huge deal that was, and was very appreciative of that. So Mr. Ward, Mr. Mann, I know you guys have done a lot of work, and there have been a lot of other people behind the scenes that have done a lot of work with the facility outside, and so we greatly appreciate all that time and effort that Mr. Richards and the ground crew and everybody that has put in a lot of time and effort. We really appreciate it. Very nice. So thank you guys.
Upcoming events, September 23rd, 7 o'clock right here. October 7th. And you would think it's supposed to start getting colder then, but I think we've already had that in the past. So, but we look forward to seeing everybody October 7th as well.
Need a motion for adjournment, please. Moved by Mr. Stanley, second by Mr. Haynes. All those in favor? Motion passes.
I think Carla
Citizens
wants to
United. United.
It is.
Correct.